My name is Howard Brown. I was born April 10th, 1926, Omaha, Nebraska. My mother had a hard time of it. Birth was really bad. And they told my parents to don't have any more kids because it'll probably kill you. I was a mistake. I was a mistake. It was just, and they were really concerned, and yet they had faith and so forth. I had three mothers. My sister was 13 years older than I am, my mother and my grandmother. And sometimes it'd get to the point where my dad would say, "Come on, Howard, let's go to the garage." Grant, my dad's name. It was his middle name. He never did use his first name. He always used Grant. His first name was Adam, and he hated it. He came from Indiana, and he said, "We're a bunch of bastards." He grew up close to the Quaker colony there, and he thought his parents had run away from the Quakers and had a couple kids at the time, or his grandparents rather. So he didn't know the history. It wasn't until somewhere in the 90s, 1990s that is, that I got word that my original name was Braun, German, and he came over here in early 1700s. And so my dad's story about being a bunch of bastards. Well, we are, but not in the same manner. I'm a very happy family, and my mother, and my sister, and my mother, and my grandmother, and my dad was he was a prince to me. He was a farm boy, had an interest in mechanics. We would go out in the garage and work on the cars and so forth. And it was back in the days when you changed the bearings on a car every 5,000 miles or something like that, and put new rings in them. He invented a number of things. He had a number of patents. Some guy came to him one day and says, I want to make a folding machine, paper folding machine. And I got this idea. He says, could you put it together? I have since seen those machines. They were still in existence and still working. He took and created that thing. It had levers that came down, pulleys and wheels and so forth. And he carried on even up through the Depression, making parts for that. He had a bunch of foundry pieces, and he used to grind them down and mill them and drill them and so forth. So I worked in this printing industry, and one time the bindery man was saying something about, I said, he asked me where I was from, and I said, Omaha. He said, have you ever heard of Omaha book folding machine? I said, yeah, my dad invented that thing. And they were still running it. And that's when his brother asked him to come out, and he came out and was working in a foundry, copper foundry for that matter. And he had to get out of it because he got copper poisoning. And every summer, even up until the day he died, come summer, his neck would turn green. And I don't think that's what killed him. He had a number of strokes. And he died when he was in mid-60s. I get in trouble, and she said, I'm going to get the last. That was the yardstick. That was her favorite stick. She never laid a hand on me, but whenever I would do something bad, well, I'm going to get the yardstick, the last. And it hung in the closet stairway, and if she started to use that door, I knew it was a real trouble. I was there when she passed on. And she died in 37, and she was there at the house. My dad came and got me. He said, I want you to see this. And he insisted I be there. My mother was raising hell about it, but he wanted me to see this death. And I never regretted it. It's normal. We all do it. It wasn't a big thing. And I've been accused They blamed it on the war, but I don't get excited about death. And when my mother died, my sister and nieces and so forth, they all said somebody said he's so damn cold-hearted. He doesn't get excited about it. And I wasn't. It was just death. I could feel it, especially when my wife passed on. That hurt. But just as death is part of life. I loved it, excepting English. But math and science and that kind of stuff, I really soaked that up, and I had full intentions of going on to college. And of course, Uncle Sam interrupted that. I was on a Boy Scout hike. We rode an overnight hike down by the Missouri River, where Offutt Air Base is now. They're in Omaha. We rode down there. There was no electricity, no telephones, and so forth. We came out on Sunday afternoon, and everybody was talking about Pearl Harbor, Pearl Harbor. What is Pearl Harbor? We didn't know, and we didn't even know what they were talking about. We finally dragged it out of the people that were up there on the road about the bombing, and that was my first knowledge of Pearl Harbor or the World War II and so on. We didn't have a social life afterwards, because most of the fellows were working in defense plants and so on. And myself, personally, I didn't want a girlfriend because I didn't want to leave her. I felt like that isn't right to get somebody you're attached to and then go off to war. I worked in a tent factory, where they made tents, sewed the tents and so on, and we folded them up and packed them up and shipped them out. That was the first year, and then the next year I went to work in a sheet metal factory, building what they called pontoons. They were docks. Got drafted and went out to Fort Leavenworth in Nebraska, and then they shipped me from there down to Little Rock, Arkansas to basic training, and I was down there till Christmas time. And we were all bemoaning the fact we weren't going to go home for Christmas. And I don't know, about the 23rd or something like that, they came through and says, pack your bags. That was the time of the Battle of the Bulge. You're shipping out. My parents they tried to be sober and helpful and so forth. But it hurt them, I know. When my son turned 18, my God, that's where I was. It was a big ship, and so it wasn't bad at all. Like I said, being stacked up, and we'd go up on the deck once a day. But it wasn't a bad trip over. We didn't know where we were until we saw Gibraltar, and we knew we were going into the Mediterranean, and then we pulled into Marseille. It was famous in World War I, and it was a division that was made up of all over the United States, and that's why they called it the Rainbow Division. MacArthur was head of it, for that matter, and it had pretty well died out, and then not existent, and then they reestablished it in 42 or 3, something like that. And a lot of those guys came from Oklahoma and down there. We came in as just replacements from all over. Then they sent us up to the front line. The 45th Division had been there ahead of us, and they had foxholes dug with timbers over the top of them, so we didn't have to dig the foxholes. We'd go out on patrols at night and so forth to try to make contact with them, find out where the lines were and so on. The first really heavy shelling I got under was our own. We were on the top of a hill, and they were supposed to shell over us, and they were landing in the treetops. Shells coming down, the shrapnel coming down. And we survived that. That was I don't know, it seemed like hours, but I imagine it was probably 20 minutes, and they kept calling them back to this artillery battalion and saying, you're hitting the top of the trees. No. But we run, and that's the worst kind of shelling you can be under, is those shells exploding up there in the top of the trees, and it's raining shrapnel down. We didn't have anything major serious as far as injuries or deaths, no deaths, but some slight wounds. There was supposed to be, there was a river, and then we were on one side of the river, and there was supposed to be a part of our division was supposed to be going up the other side. Well, somehow this other side evidently got detained somehow. This was the end of the war. It wasn't just, going down there bang, 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 bang. It was periods of calm. And we were walking up this street with the river down between us and looking up ahead all the way, looking for anybody out a window or a roof and so on. And all of a sudden, it came from across the river. And this is when Bob went down. And I pulled him back into the building. There was a storefront there. I actually I have to look at it now and think I was insane. I was so mad that these guys, the war was over, and here they opened up on us with this machine gun. I went across the blown out bridge across this river. How I didn't get killed then, I don't have no idea. Because I was out there exposed on these framework. Got across the other side and went up that other side looking for where our troops were. They were supposed to be over there. And came to what was a lumber yard, had been. It still was because they had the lumber stacked up. And I don't know, for some reason I raised up to look around, see what I could see. And I was looking right square in the eyes of a German soldier. I don't know if he was a soldier or a kid. And I reached up and pulled the trigger for her, and he ducked, and I did too. I never did find him, so I don't think I killed him, because I see the blue eyes today. And afterwards, I went around the lumber and see if he could find him, and they'd all disappeared. And then I went over and looked where this machine gun was. There was 2 machine guns on a stake, on this pedestal. And I don't know if you never heard one of these German machine guns, but they go brrr, and we called them burp guns, because they didn't go pop, 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 they went brrr. And there were 2 of them mounted on this pedestal. And nobody was around. I never found anybody. And then I went back and joined the company. Caught hell for it because I went across there and I wasn't supposed to. We were riding in trucks. It was just convoy, because the war was basically over, and that's what made me so mad at this deal down there in Firth. It was just old men and kids that was putting up little spot defenses, and we'd have to clean them up and then go on. We tried to take them prisoners if we could. We didn't kill them, and for that matter, when we got down in there, where there was order on don't shoot anybody, because von Braun was down in there somewhere. The rocket scientist, he was down there somewhere, and they were looking for him. And they give us strict orders: don't shoot anybody unless they're shooting you back. Take prisoners. But we we were just above Munich, just north of Munich, and we smelled this horrible odor, putrid. And we couldn't figure out what it was. And we probably for 10, 15 miles. And we built it down that night, and then the next morning got up, and we're supposed to go into what had turned out to be Dachau. I don't know exactly what happened, but when I went to report in, he says, Brown, take 2 couple fellas in that Jeep and go. We got some snipers up here in the hill. Go up there and see if you can find them. They were down, they were raising Cain. I never did find them. And by that time I was a sergeant, and battlefield sergeant. It doesn't take much. You shoot the guy next to you away. You advance rank. But we looked and looked for them and couldn't find them. And then when we came back that afternoon, I found out that the troops had gone into Dachau, and that was horrible. when I started talking to the fellows, comrades about it, don't go there, don't you? I said, I missed it. And he, oh, yeah, I want to see it. No, you don't want to see that. I could have gone in, but my buddy said, no, don't you do it. They didn't explain it. They just said there were bodies and dead bodies and incinerators and those kind of things that since I've seen it, never forget it. It was horrible. And for that matter, a number of times I went with a fellow that became a friend. He was Jewish, and he was a prisoner there. And we would go around Denver talking to seniors or upper grades in the high schools, and he would present the Jewish side of it and what he experienced. All I would do is say, I'm a Christian. I didn't experience it except I saw it, I knew it, I smelled it and so forth. But this is true. It's not a fabrication of the Jewish religion. I just more or less was a witness to what happened. And I think it made an impression on some of those kids. But they were all sick. It made it nice. Just overwhelmed. But the minute that the war was over and they started training us for jungle warfare and so on, I think within 3 days we had bayonets on our rifles and we were starting hand-to-hand combat because they had intention of sending us to Japan. And so when that hydrogen bomb went off, when I came back, I went back up to Camp Kilmer there, and I said, do I have to go back? And the guy said, well, let's see, you got X number of points, you got a year and 1 day. It was January 5th I left, and I came back January 5th. So you're over there for a year and a day. No, you don't have to go back. And that broke my heart. It was just graduate courtship. We would go as a group, then pretty soon we began to pair off and so forth, and that was how that ended up. And she was still in college, so we waited until she got out of college. And she got out of college in June, we got married in July. So we just planned on coming out here when we got married. And she had an aunt and uncle that lived here. And he sent me a clipping out of the newspaper for help wanted. And so I wrote him and presented myself to Hirschfield. I came out here on a Saturday morning and had an interview. And the superintendent of the print shop, I sat there and talked to Mr. Hirschfield, and he was quite receptive to my idea. I was just young, I brand new at the trade and so on. And this Charlie Newman, who's the superintendent, he's too damn young, he's too damn young, he's too damn young. Well, I found out later that he had guys in the shop he should have been hiring and advancing instead of going out finding an expert from next door. They put me together with a man from Chicago that was supposed to know all about it. He was a man, he was an old man, he was probably 35 years old. But we put him together one first night, and the guy didn't know a thing about it. He was really lost. And thank goodness they left an experienced man on the press that normally worked on it. He wasn't a pressman. And I found out later on that the next morning when he went to talk to the boss, he told the boss, you better hang on to Howard, but get rid of that other guy. And he went out the door the next morning. This cousin of hers that sent us the clipping out of the newspaper, they became kind of a mother-father for us. They were older. And Bill married Judy, that was one of the daughters. And they just took us in like we were children, and it was really a great experience. I never can thank them enough. I didn't feel them at that time. It wasn't until probably 1951 or something like that. I'd gotten married, moved to Denver, set up here. I came up with this post-traumatic, like they call it now, on the battlefield. I didn't know what was causing it. And all of a sudden I'd go into convulsions and so forth. And they took all kinds of tests up and down, heart, brain, so forth. Couldn't find a thing wrong with me. I have to give credit to my employer because I was working on this big heavy machinery. And all of a sudden I could pass out. And if I did, I could have gone down into the machinery and confetti. So they were taking a chance on, the workman's compensation and everything else, but they stuck with me. And that's where the Christian Science came in. I came to really depend on the positive thoughts that go with that. Instead of all negative, like you're going to hell or you're bound for this and that, it was God is love and so forth. You're a perfect child and so on. And I hate to think of what, I was so jumpy, I was so nervous, I was so, I had a lot of companionship, a lot of help and so forth, but that wasn't the true Howard. Well, the philosophy of scientists is that God is good. What you think up here reflects on your body. And everybody has some good points and bad points. And I try to pick out the good points and look at them that way. That was an accident. I have to admit, we had a girl that was an accident. We didn't intend to have children, because I didn't know what my longevity was at that time in the late 50s. Birth went through, everything was fine, except when she went in to deliver, it was a stillborn because the cord was around her neck. And once we had that child and everything was normal, except when the cord was around her neck, we knew that everything was okay for children. And with that, it was just, we couldn't wait to have a child. No, we planned on more, and we were delighted, and then when he came, we were delighted, and it's been a delight ever since. It was a joy to me. That's all I don't remember the bad points, only the good. And he always, all the way through his life, he was a real proud, made me proud. He had this mechanical trait in him too, he still does. And we work on cars and so forth. In later years, we had an old Rambler station wagon, and he became real involved in that, working on it. I don't think there was hardly a nut and bolt on that car that we didn't take apart. If, we were working on a car, he'd be right there with me. We just buddied up there. He's interested in that kind of stuff. He played the trombone. He was into music. He was in Boy Scouts, and he got involved in a band, a marching band and music and so forth. It was a real great thing. And he did work for a company called Thiokol. It was the ones that built the rockets to send the shuttle. He was a rocket scientist. He'll deny that. Try to be like my own was, have an interest in what he was doing and things that I was interested in too. So, no, I tried to duplicate my dad. I thought that much of it. And that's what most people say about me, I guess. I don't know. I've turned more to like my dad was. I was, up until that time, I was more like my mother, more or less impulsive, so on. And with age, I was slowing down and become more rational, I guess. I want to stay healthy as I can, get around, be able to do things, and so forth. My mother lived to be 98 years old, and I got that gene in me, I guess. My sister was 97 or something like that. My dad was only 62. But I evidently got that gene in me that makes for long living. Yeah, I'm just a kid. Yeah.
You may have to go back in 10 years and do this again.
I don't want to be here that long. I've done what I want.